Today, let us know in brief about yoga. So, what is yoga? The word yoga has been derived from yuj. Yuj is to join. Yoga is the joining or the union of individual soul with the universal soul. And there are many instances of yoga. But this Mahayoga is the special one. When we have been in a position to get the desired object, when the desired object has been got, so our mind becomes calm. And in that mind, the bliss of the self is reflected and it is experienced. This is also yoga, but this is ordinary yoga. And in case of a deep sleep, in deep sleep, the individual soul has been subsided in one's own self. And in deep sleep, one experiences the happiness of the true self only. But this is also ordinary yoga. But in deep sleep, there is the envelopment of ignorance of one's own self. During deep sleep, we don't know what we are really. That means there is the envelopment of ignorance. So the individual is happy or blissful in deep sleep. He is unconsciously blissful. In deep sleep, the experience of bliss has been continued. One is experiencing the bliss in a deep sleep, but he does not know that he is experiencing the happiness. So that is how, in a deep sleep, one is unconsciously blissful. So this is also ordinary yoga. This is not Mahayoga. So in these two cases, when the desired object is obtained and in deep sleep, the individual soul is united. The individual soul is united with the universal soul as it were. Is not exactly united, but as it were. But in Mahayoga, the individual soul is united with the universal soul. So that is how it is called Mahayoga. In Mahayoga, one is consciously blissful. That means the experience of happiness has been continued. And one knows that, yes, I have been experiencing happiness. That means he is consciously blissful in a jnana samadhi. Generally, the yoga is defined as restraining the mind stuff. They usually say, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. The chitta vritti has been restrained. So the yoga is defined restraining the chitta vritti. But this understanding is wrong. But really, yoga is defined as the destruction of mind stuff, but not restraining the mind stuff. But usually, the people have thought that yoga is restraining the vital breaths or the pranas. Yoga means the destruction of desires for sensory objects and giving up the body consciousness and standing still in our true self. This is called real yoga. So the vital breaths are there. The vital breaths, they carry the subtle body with the individual soul from one gross body to another gross body. When a person expires, so the subtle body leaves that gross body and it will be moving. And these vital breaths take the subtle body with the individual soul from one gross body to the other gross body. If the vital breaths are controlled, when the breath has been controlled, then the mind becomes calm. And when the mind becomes calm, the bliss of our own self has been experienced. But it is not true bliss. Till there is the control of breaths, there is the calmness of the mind. And if that control of breath has been removed, again the man will be having the desires for sensory objects and the body consciousness, and again he will be unhappy. But they have not been the so-called desires of sensory objects have not been destroyed. Again, they have been remained like that. Again, the unhappiness continues. So, what is the use of that? We will be only happy when the desires for sensory objects have been destroyed. When our body consciousness has been destroyed. And when the control of vital breaths is removed, the mind becomes unsteady again. And the dormant desires that have been present in our mind, that is, the desires for sensory objects and body consciousness, have been jumped up. So, what is the cause for unsteadiness of the mind? The mind has become unsteady because the vital breaths have not been controlled. That is not the cause. Because the vital breaths have not been controlled, there is no happiness like that. There is no happiness because There are desires for sensory objects in the mind, and there is the body consciousness in the mind. And these have been due to lack of discrimination, dispassion, erroneous supposition, and ignorance of one's own self. The desires for sensory objects have been there because these sensory objects are givers of happiness. We have understood that the sensory objects are givers of happiness. But if we inquire whether the sensory objects have been in a position to give us happiness, no, the sensory objects don't give happiness to all. The happiness is not at all there in the sensory objects, but the happiness is there in our true self. And by this inquiry, we will be in a position to destroy the desires for sensory objects, and the mind becomes calm. And in the calm mind, the bliss of our true self has been reflected and experienced. Then again, the body consciousness. So we have not inquired well whether we are the cross body or not. While living, we talk, but when we are dead, we talk. That means we are the talkative entity. We are of the nature of consciousness. We are not this gross body, but consciousness. And when we know exactly that we are a consciousness, but not the gross body, then we stand still in that consciousness. And when we stand still in that consciousness, we will be permanently happy. And this is called Mahayoga or the real yoga. By practicing the Mahayoga or the real yoga, we will be in a position to experience the permanent happiness. So we have to know what exactly is our real nature. To become permanently happy, we have to know exactly where the happiness is and what is our real nature. So, as the horses, are restrained by holding up the bridles, till there is the holding of the bridles, the horse will not only be in a position to run, but the inner feeling of the horse to run is there. It has not been destroyed. By controlling the vital breaths, the mind has become calm, but the desires for sensory objects and the body consciousness have not been destroyed. So that is how, if at all we have to become permanently happy, we have to consciously know that there is no happiness in the sensory objects. And we are not the gross body, but we are the consciousness. The at the time of death, the vital breaths leave off the body. With the individual soul, the subtle body leaves the gross body. At that time, the body dies and the senses die. But the body consciousness is not dead. The idea that I am the body is not dead. The idea that I am the gross body continues in the subtle body. After the death of the gross body, the idea that I am the body will be continued in the subtle body. And when the desired object has been obtained, and in deep sleep, so the individual soul merges as it were in causal body in sleep while living. But when we attain the self realization, definitely we know that we are consciousness. We are witness to everything. That means we remain as a witness consciousness. When we remain as a witness consciousness, the idea that we are the gross body, the subtle body, the causal body, and the Maya Tanu or the Mahakarana Sharira has been given up, and only the consciousness remains. And that consciousness is of the nature of happiness. And if at all we have to experience permanent happiness, we have to practice this real yoga, that is, remaining as consciousness. And when we remain as a consciousness, we will be permanently happy. And this has been called Mahayoga or real yoga. And by this, I end my talk.